half an hour and that's it. It's really weird. So yeah, what I was trying to say, like, what if we approach it a bit differently and say our self-managed customers are going to get the version of GitLab that we deployed at some point in time that month, and that is going to be called 11.11, for example. And this actually buys us time. Basically, what our customers are going to be getting is an older version of GitLab than what's on GitLab.com. So instead of rushing to ensure that everything that we deployed by the 22nd lands there, we say everything that that is on, what is now, April 1st, 2019, everything that we created at that point, this is the snapshot of what we are sure we're working on.
This is more natural to me because...
If we keep that magic date, the 7th, which we now have, then we could say, okay, the 7th, it needs to at least have been able to go on staging and all the way to production. So you look at the 7th. If the 7th happens to be a Monday, and it will take until the next Sunday for it actually to get deployed, which would be the 14th, 13th, and then to production a week later, the 20th, will really help.
Another problem with this approach...
We cut it off at the date at which whatever was commercial the 7th will definitely have made it in some... Yeah, I don't
Another
know.
problem with this approach is that you are giving a snapshot of past, and that past might not be broken, or might be broken already, or you need to fix...
Fixes may have come in later.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But theoretically though, we would then have to test that snapshot as well somehow, right? And have the stable branch created off of that, package it up, and then have a way of ensuring that everything that we want to ship is not already fixed, and if it is, pick it into stable, and then we run into problems again.
But if something we started working on the 8th may make it into that release 2 weeks later, it's going to be really hard for PMs to have the time to get the documentation in shape, to get the release post prepared. Even something merged on the 13th could still make it into that release, because then we're exactly 1 week ahead.
Yeah. So past is not working, future is not working. Present?
Yeah, and we sort of have another version of the same problem where when we get to the point where we're doing, because in theory we'll get to a point someday where the first RC deployment of the next release goes out the day after the last release was cut.
Yeah.
And so at that point, what's the on-prem experience? It's eventually going to become one way or the other an arbitrary cutoff date. So you might as well pick an arbitrary cutoff date and track to that.
And see which one gives you the most confidence in the least amount of work.
Yeah.
Is it the past though? Given how we move, I don't think the past is the solution here. As in selecting.
It's natural to me, like pick the last stable one from a couple days ago that you're pretty confident is stable.
How do we do that without actually introducing a manual intervention? Because what we are trying to do here is automate all of these things so that we say, like, at this time or this moment, this is what we ship.
Well, one interesting thing that you consider there is we're working with Melissa on some of the compliance requirements around releases. So maybe what defines that becomes like a QA sign-off, or a compliance sign-off that says this is the one, and then that can be entered into the system and then resume the automation. It is still a manual intervention, but we're going to have to put some manual intervention into the process at some point, and so if we can align this to that, we're not creating multiple manual interventions.
Right. It's funny because we are trying to remove the manual intervention as much as possible.
Yeah, and the one that's to be added, I guess, will be light, but I mean, I don't know how you would get around someone saying,
Fucking low path.
you either have to have someone who says, like, this was good enough, like a QA type person to say, like, we confirm the quality is good at this moment, or you just ship one on the day you chose and hope for the best, and know that you'll patch it, I suppose, like if something is discovered. But with self-managed, it's a lot harder than if we just had a pure .com website where we could just patch ourselves. We're gonna have to send a patch
And
to
then it gets
people.
some can't import path.
What if we...
You can move it on the same directory it works.
So now this is going to be complicated, so bear with me. What if we create a, like, Jörg is working on this thing with the QA issue and all of that stuff, but one of the things that he's adding there is we are going to have an overview of what's actually deployed to which environment. And what we could do in theory is say that we still have the 20-second cutoff, and we are going to have this JSON file that is going to have like, environment. It's going to have the package name or package version or something like that. And whatever we say that was in, whatever we say was deployed here, and is the latest one, on the cutoff date or on the 22nd, that's what's gonna end up in a stable release. Okay, let me try to explain
Is
this.
that roughly, I mean, that sounds like something you were saying earlier, whatever
No.
the production on the 22nd.
It is pretty much like that, but we can have a different cutoff date and say, whatever landed there to buy some time for product to.
Yeah.
It is pretty much the same, I guess, now I just think of it, but if you start thinking about the automated systems, everything is going to end up like that, whether it's a past or a present or future, it's all of that.
If for on-premise deployments or yes, packages, we keep the 7th as the same type of feature trees we have today, then you could say on the 7th we always create, because the fact that the branch is called 11.10 auto-deploy, why is the version number even in there if we're talking about .com, where it really doesn't matter what the version number is at any point anyway. So if we have the automatic weekly thing just onto a generically named auto-deploy branch, but then we have a versioned branch that is still created on the 7th, then we're effectively back to the same feature tree system, but that branch would only be used to create that release and then goes. But we wouldn't accidentally have stuff that gets merged between the 7th and the 22nd that's actually only intended for the next release go into that, which causes troubles with the blog post and causes troubles with like our scheduling and what we promised to deliver something by. Am I making any sense?
You're making sense. It's just that.
So I think for what we ship to customers, having a feature freeze is actually really useful because it means we can be pretty consistent in what release will something land in.
But then our policies need to completely change. We can't then just say, well, we're going to fix it and put it into master. Then developers need to be way more involved into actually creating the releases as well.
But isn't that the same thing as now? If they're fixing the bug that just made it into 11.10 stable or whatever, they know they need to put that label on.
Right, but here's the problem. Who is responsible for creating those releases? Well, delivery is at the moment, release managers. So basically it becomes a situation where a developer throws things over the fence and they put this magic label and expect something happens automatically. It doesn't scale, it just doesn't work. Like, delivery team is not supposed to exist forever,
Sure.
That's the idea at least. And if we go down that route, then we actually have to have dedicated people for release management only, right? Like just handling when is something going to land, messaging and all of that. It's not impossible.
So in the flow you're describing here, that picking the 11.10 label, everything would just be picked automatically, no one checks that manually?
No.
And then of course it will be released, it's like sneak things in, but...
Yeah, pretty much. Like we are going to depend on metrics, we're going to, like depending on QA, like all of that passes, cool, move on. Like we are trying to remove any manual intervention.
Yeah.
Because that's what you that's what you want, like continuous delivery.
Yeah, no, of course,
well, right?
of course. But for purposes of the blog post and of the release, there needs to be kind of a cutoff date because we want to know at some point this is exactly what's going to be in the release so that people can write the blog posts and we don't like incorrectly communicate.
But here's a question, maybe Jason for you as well. We're never going to win, as in we're never going to have like 100% spotless release, as in there's always going to be a bug somewhere. So we might need to actually define what's our acceptable failure rate, as in if, for example, we release something on the 22nd and we realize this didn't end up there, maybe it's okay to just edit the blog post and announce, edit this made it then instead, or it's gonna make it in the later release, or remove it from the make it a bit more dynamic than it is right now, because right now it feels like it's set in stone. That's how it feels like.
Yeah, I actually have an issue. I'll tag both of you, and it's talking about that problem. There's not a clear emerging solution that everybody thinks is a good one, of course, but there's definitely a problem there where it's not just that. It's like the moment that we apply the missed missed deliverable label. It's the moment that we do the blog post. It's the moment that we publish the RC. It's like all of these things are sort of aligned to different arbitrary dates that none are consistent in any way. And I'll tag you both in that.
Yeah.
So it would be interesting to hear your
What
point.
do batch releases look like in the system? Because you're saying the delivery team is not meant to be like indefinite, and then we would need release managers, but don't we need those anyway for
Yeah,
batches?
but we will have not a whole team to do that. We can go back to the rotating role of release managers, right? Like you have basically a fully automated system. Like you would go back to this, right? Like you need to execute some of these things, but that's not a problem, right? Because
But then you're gonna have the same thing where people can say pick into whatever release or batch release. And then-
absolutely. Right. Again, maybe the solution is to actually have a release management team, but the idea is not to, or try to not have it. I mean, most companies do have that, right? Most companies that ship software do have dedicated teams only to making this happen. But we're kind of trying to automate it because we have our product that is actually doing that as well.
But would it be so bad to have like kind of separate release strategies for the package release, and everything we're describing here is more directly related to CD for .com? We don't need to at
That's
the same
a
time change
business
everything
decision.
around feature freeze and everything.
That's a business decision that way, because that directly incurs cost of actually having someone to handle this or that.
Well, yeah, but we've had
These-
that for years, right? Like the
Not officially, no.
no, but the extent of like release management that has needed to take place to manage those exception requests and to manage whether things that get that big label assigned actually need to go into that release or not.
Wouldn't that, I don't see why it would be any different. I mean, GitLab.com and on-prem have the same requirements here. I don't see how, if we made this process specific to GitLab.com and only for GitLab.com, but we had to use the Omnibus package, it'd probably end up the same.
What makes it a little bit different is
Because I guess for backports, that wouldn't matter. We wouldn't have backports, because we would always be moving forward.
But that's not possible. Self-managed customers can't.
But if you ignore backports and just, I think it would be the same. I think the exception request stuff and all this picking stuff, it would still be the same.
Well, I'm
even
hoping.
for all of the play stuff.
I think so. I mean, because part of the auto-deploy stuff kind of assumes that we want a week of stability, and then we take from master, right? But if we get rid of that assumption, we could just do from master every day instead of every week with picks. We're right now a little bit unsure whether that's a good idea. I think right now we're saying we're going to shoot for a week of stability with picks. See how it goes.
But you're saying a week of stability, but a week until we have seen it stable enough for staging, or we've patched in stability. Which means that AE production will always be stable-ish, or at least the auto deploy branch itself.
Sorry?
Well, no, whatever lands on production should always be stable, right? Because we will have had that week on staging and other environments.
Yeah,
That's the idea.
Fixed stuff. So whatever on production is always stable.
That's the idea.
Mm-hmm.
I think what we're really trying to avoid here is never being able to deploy to production because of problems on master.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And also, it's not just master is unstable. I think maybe partly that, but also just the length of time it takes to get to production. By the time we figure out Like, you know, we can't do these quick iterations
Mm.
on deployments, so I think this is necessary for now, until we can improve that time.
Really official.
But how does it affect
I can
the
check
package
the
release
exists in the
already?
already Python. So just try to
Nope,
get it,
that's,
and catch the error that it
a
raises.
problem.
There's no like.
Yeah, there is a reason why companies are
the
mostly
length,
either
but
SaaS
anything
or
negative in
ship
there.
software, right?
So these
We're
are
trying to do the
index
same
and
thing
then
and
it's
speed this
error
up
and
as
this.
well.
So what I pull it, use turn the index into an
Yeah.
absolute one and then check.
Maybe we can make it easier for
This is where Python.
companies to get like new versions.
Yeah,
of
but it's
the-
like in a
like-
way. Yeah.
If we can make it easier for them to get the little RC updates and apply them.
That's not a problem for them to do right now. It's just that that instability that is implied in the package is making it like something that people don't want to do. Although we have been speaking with some customers that are more than receptive of doing some continuous deployment of GitLab itself, if there are some guarantees that that's stable enough. I don't want to mention a name because we're still recording, but they were actually specifically interested in like, oh, if you can make it hands-off for us and things just magically appear, the latest version and everything, perfect. But the reason why we locked this is because we don't have that guarantee from you. I mean, it's a hard guarantee to give as well.
Yeah, but they would probably be comfortable deploying whatever we also deploy in production.
Yeah.
After it has had that week through the other environments.
Exactly.
Is the right way to do it through like a stable channel or something like that? That we apply
So yes,
to
the LTS type of release.
Well, LTS is sort of something a little different. What I'm saying is not like pick one release that we say we'll support for
I know.
2 years, but like
Have a slower running
every once
branch.
in a while when we think something is stable, just tag that as a stable release.
You have a mainline and you have a stable, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But
Yeah.
that stable could be what we deploy to production.
Yeah, stable could be deployed to any production.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like this stable branch could just be what we deem ready for production. But then you still,
Then you're running a completely different set of problems that that are pretty much. I wouldn't say the problems are a bit different. Where how slow is the stable branch?
I would
Are
think
you
it should
going
be
to-
more than like a week behind.
How do you confirm that it's a stable then? And then like we need to do somewhere as well.
If it had a week on all the other systems, that's when we deem it stable enough for production, right? But it has had that week to iron stuff out or revert things that broke it. So if we have customers who are happy to do something that we deem stable enough, then wouldn't that be what we would call a stable branch?
Yeah, how often do we have like major incidents related to the release in GitLab.com?
We
That-
have,
Related to,
Related to like the
Broken code.
the broken code that we
yeah,
deploy.
usually we have many at the beginning of the month and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
it tails off.
the accumulation point is the 7th.
The 7th is
Yeah.
most likely. And then this would potentially be around the 22nd. So they would probably mostly be whatever difference we decide apart they are. Like if we wait 3 days for the latest tag to be in production, and then that automatically gets the stable tag unless there's been a production incident related to the code. And then the self-managed installer is built off of the stable branch.
Yeah.
Yeah, if the self, right.
But then you've got this, it doesn't solve or make worse
No.
the other problem of having the blog post just be totally unbound from reality.
Yeah.
It's just,
It's
you're
so-
sort of in the same situation whichever way you do it.
Yeah.
We need like a daily blog post or something like that.
It's called change log. Yeah, it's a tough problem. Tough problem.
The best practice for the for that launch is this actually can help us too. Like if we decided it was a little bit longer, like if it was a week between the latest and the blog post and the self-managed release, then you have a week there to work on a blog post that's actually based on a single moment in time.
So then we would need to make sure that if issues are found on that release that we deem stable still, that those patches make it into whatever we are about to deploy as well, or what we are about to ship to customers as well.
Yeah, because you're constantly potentially taking in more things.
Yeah, so, yeah, exactly. So there would still need to be, on the one hand, we have master, of course, then we have weekly pulled out master into, yeah, start drawing it, that's a better
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do now. So this is the proposed process that we have so far. That's what we are trying to do right now. This is going to be the auto-deploy branch. Right. The idea is we branched off, and any change we need we pick from master. Right. This branch ends here. The next
This would
week.
be a version of the deploy branch. It has a version.
This is the version to auto-deploy branch, right? So, and this is where it ends. Like it doesn't go further away from there. We create a new one from here. So this is auto 2, and it does the same thing. So the idea here was, if we do this, we can always deploy from this branch. It can always propagate through environments, and master always remains the source of truth. And that's the whole process, right? People pick into or our system picks into the branches automatically, and we discard those branches, right? Now, what you're kind of proposing here is master and so mainline and I don't know, release branch, release branch, I guess would be the name, or
I think there's a couple ways you can do this. I think one way you can do it is just with a tag and say this was known to be stable. We don't have the ability, we're not creating a branch and then developing in that branch separately for this. We would just say when that last auto deploy was deployed to production, 3 days later it gets a tag stable.
so basically, instead of discarding the branch, you're proposing continuing, and this would be the stable.
Yeah, or if
And
there's
then,
some point in master that would be analogous, you can tag master. I don't
so
know.
the only way this stable branch is going to, so this is also a commit coming from here. So we are branching off from this one. The next time something stable receives, it's actually week 2. Like this whole branch gets merged in there.
Yeah,
And then you have another one, this is week 3.
and that would come in, yeah.
Week 2, and then this one would be merged here as well.
The only
So-
difference I think to what you're writing is that stable doesn't, or the bottom row doesn't need to be a branch, I don't think, unless you want, the only reason you would want it to be a branch is if you need to hotfix it
You need,
separately from.
So you're saying,
but you need backports as well. That's the problem. That's the main problem. Like this is only one dimension, and we have customers that use 3 backports or whatever. So you constantly need to have a branch where you would want a backport, because we have security releases, we have all of that stuff that requires stable.
yeah, but I think
Branches.
to rephrase what I think you're saying is, don't tag or branch until you've actually successfully deployed to production, right?
Yeah,
And it's a little bit different because we're saying, we're picking points in time to create a branch, and then we're just gonna try to deploy to production. It might fail, and then we can pick changes into it, and eventually we'll get to production. I think what you're saying is, deploy the latest on master, eventually that will get to production. When it does, then tag.
yeah.
And then that's your branch. Or
Yeah.
maybe if you have to do backwards, then that's branch. I think the only issue, and I like that approach, but the only issue is that
That's this.
we may never get to production.
Yeah.
Like, and I think the idea of having this branch is that, given what we know in history, it's like, we need to make these small incremental changes to get to production.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
we can't take the latest on master, because it may just never make it, given the amount of changes that are merged into master
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah.
Fair.
And again,
Right.
like
In
I
which
get
case,
this.
then you need the branch and what you're drawing. Yeah.
This is fine if you have one dimension, but we don't. We have at minimum 3 other stable branches that you how are those automatically maintained and so on, right? Like it becomes a problem because in order for your security fix to end up in any of these branches, you need to then, like, once this got discarded, you need to be quick to react. Like if this was a security severity 1 issue, right? You picked it and deployed it on GitLab.com. But you can't wait anymore. You can't wait for more changes to go into this branch to deploy. You now need to pick this one directly into stable, and all of a sudden you have this branch not being a copy of these branches.
Yeah, and the way I was thinking about it was that you would be tagging master, like once it was in there.
And that the problem is like there are way too many changes
Yeah, so
that
it's
creep into.
never quite end up stable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, sadly we talked about this already and it didn't really work.
Mhm.
But yeah. Tough. Who would have thought that versioning and naming is difficult? Yeah. But just now that you understand like what kind of levels of challenges we have here, the thing that we proposed here with this switch and how we're thinking about weekly deploys and any other, like we know that there is going to be a problem of announcing things, right, and timing what is going to end up in a self-managed release, but ignoring that.
Well, if there was no self-managed release, this all sounds super reasonable and to be done, I think.
Yeah, just the self-managed. I think we might just need to bite the bullet, do it, and see where we break. The problem
then, or another way to think about it is how can we make the self-managed release not different than the web release, and maybe we just
Well, that's what we
publish
did.
yeah.
That's what we've been doing so far, right? The problem is the company, we, product engineers, do not want to wait for a month for this to catch up. We want to have this available as soon as possible, right?
Right, but like, I mean, yeah. But, so if we're talking about getting to a cadence of updating GitLab.com every day, then maybe it's a cadence where we also publish a self-managed installer every day.
We can do that, like that's not a problem. You can publish the packages. Who's gonna install it? That's a different question. How are you gonna support your customers? That's where the problem comes from. Because we are already having problems of this one month cycle being a major problem for a lot of our customers, right?
How so?
Well,
They're not forced to upgrade.
they're not forced to upgrade, but when they do, without naming names again, you know that we have some customers that just recently jumped to 11.5, for example. And because we already moved away, we already like progressed further, their regressions, their problems are something that we didn't see because we moved on.
Yeah.
And they upgraded, what, 8-9 months later. So like the amount of changes that accumulates, you have a very difficult problem of controlling once it actually, like customer actually upgrades, controlling what that actually brings in their environments.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we have to talk about like, hey, maybe, you know, we can have all of the work related to feature development actually also have to be, you know, how are we going to support older versions, customers with older versions, like maybe they can't upgrade. Do we need to create a release 11.0 for them?
Mm-hmm.
You know, 11.0.11? And then you run into a problem of backporting. And
Yeah. Then you're maintaining, and then you're doing LTS.
then you're doing LTS. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think, like, for now, I think we just kind of need to think about like how this is going to reflect on GitLab.com and like figure out, again, iterate on it to see like what kind of changes we need to make in our processes to make this easier. Let me just check. I actually do have some calls, but let me see whether I can ask you more questions. Oh, 54 minutes, all right.
I'm really frustrated that we can't figure this out.
I'm gonna assume that this is okay-ish for now. I already know that there are going to be certain problems in like communication and all of that, but we'll survive. It's gonna be a bit confusing. Jason, now like the questions I have are more for you on what we can actually do and use of GitLab for some of these things. Let me just quickly